Good morning. Thank you all for joining us for the final day of the 45th Annual Housing California Conference. I hope you all had an amazing day yesterday. I know I had a wonderful time getting to know many of you, participating in the sessions, meeting wonderful new folks. One of the things that really struck me yesterday is we have just a phenomenal cross-section, not just of the geography of the state, of the diversity of the state, but actually of the generations of our movement. I was in the hall yesterday and had an opportunity to run into a gentleman who I'm not seeing this morning, but who shared with me that he was our founding board member, board chair. I'd never met him. It was really wonderful to hear his story about Housing California's early days, and then to see so many new young people who are eager to be part of our community and to create the change that Californians really need. We're actually so excited to start this morning's program with a poet who is going to be reflecting more on the theme of bringing together community across generation, of celebrating our elders and creating space for new young leaders. So please help me welcome J. Nyla McNeil, also known as Dr. Inc., to the conference. J. Nyla McNeil is a researcher and writer, an artist and musician, a poet and postgrad intern with the City of Long Beach's Office of Youth Development. Their poem this morning will help us all reflect on leadership, both the emerging leaders, many of whom are sitting with us, and existing leaders in our work who have accomplished so much, some of whom we will hear from in this morning's plenary. Please join me on the stage.
Hello, everyone. My name is J. Nyla, and this poem is called They Ask Us to Fix the World. And it's dedicated to our first and second inaugural Youth Advisory Council of the City of Long Beach. On Wednesdays, I take the bus from 54th to 1st with a lot to process, unnerved, though pride spilling from my once bittered, old-souled seeker grin. Youth at the forefront, youth occupying every table and chair, youth demanding what we all need, what's just and fair, and it's data-backed, too. It's more space than what it's ever been historically. In my bones, I feel my ancestors say, yes, we're here. They say youth are the future, but we feel, as adults in the room, hold experience over youth heads as if our nows didn't currently have any meaning, as if we only ever stare blankly at screens, unbothered, as if our time here so far has been absolutely perfect, objectively better, as if we didn't also suffer the same. To be given pedestals, yet knock down a few pegs. They ask us to fix the world, taking up rooms and tables and chairs, ask us to form new bodies, to become powerful in the day, to answer generations of crises like SAT questions under crushing misinformation, TikToks of the clock, under pressure of misperceptions, under perceptions of scarcity, under erasure, my hood heroes, under erasure, medicine people, out of fear of there ain't nothing for us. Where will I go? What will I eat? All we can do is trace the red line around a few times, then decide to look up and walk out. Then come back. They ask us to listen to them, then to fix the world, and then again to listen to them, to try what they think their own disempowered training takes over their executive functioning, yet we're the executives at this function, apparently. New platforms, old ways. Appealing to humanity in a place who's built on taking it away, yet let's say that our work is the same. It was seeding. Now it's sprouting. Sowing hope for more seeds of change, next season seeding, then sprouting. Might lose a couple on the way. Then we get to know how it goes. We will get to be a mighty oak. Teachers who sacrifice procedures for real support, growing pains, honoring young mothering stretch marks, growing pains, holding space, uplifting unhoused guardians, like we will to no more unnecessary pain for our parental figures. No more, where will we go? What will we eat? All we can do is a lot more. Just talk. Describing new pathways under coordinates and experiences not yet lived, prospective statistics predicting less soil skin do not lead to open doors of stability and trust. Oh, that the sun is doing its work alongside us, that the water yet remains vulnerable and clear. To move forward in this work, we are attempting to scrape fruitlessly around few roots of our ancestors. Who did you love? Where are you now? What worked? Who do you remember? Dare ask, what was it like? Head to head with tense battle bodies when we realize we've asked of wars. We've unknowingly asked of the force from whom they've purposely dirtied themselves, from whom they've shared languages away from, and from whom they've hid. But the burns of sequoias have silent stories to share. Adrenaline pump trunks, whether quickly, best we leave them to soft-gazedly observe the now. New generations of sprouts. Hold space for passing to come. We doula their fighting souls.
Thank you, Dr. Ink, for sharing your talent and inspiration with us this morning. Let's give her another round of applause. This morning, I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Attorney General Rob Bonta to our conference. In April 2021, Rob Bonta was sworn in as the 34th Attorney General of the state of California. He is the first person of Filipino descent to occupy the position. Attorney General Bonta's passion for justice and fairness was instilled in him by his parents, who served on the front lines of some of America's most important social justice movements. That's why he's decided to become a lawyer to help right historic wrongs and fight for people who have been harmed. Attorney General Bonta has led statewide fights for racial justice, economic well-being, and environmental justice, and has worked to further the rights of immigrant families, renters, and other working Californians. As the people's attorney, he sees seeking accountability from those who abuse their power and harm others as one of the most important functions of his job. He has taken on powerful interest and advanced systemic change, pursuing corporate accountability, standing up for workers, punishing big polluters, and fighting racial injustice. Attorney General Bonta, we are thrilled you are joining us today to share your team's increasing involvement in the housing space. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about how it really takes all of us, and it's so wonderful to have you on our team. We're excited to hear how you're thinking about your work, the efforts you're leading to advance social justice, and your priorities for housing in the coming year. Let's welcome Attorney General Bonta with a big round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing today? Good to see you. I know you're on the third day of your conference. I hope it's been fruitful and productive, and you will head home into the weekend with a lot of inspiration and excitement and energy for the work ahead. I know I'm excited and pumped up and thrilled to be a part of this collaborative effort, this commitment that we all share collectively to creating more housing justice, creating more housing, protecting tenants, protecting the rights of homeowners and of tenants. And thank you for the work that you do every day. I know you don't do it for the credit or the recognition. You do it because you are mission-driven, values-driven. You know it's the right thing to do, that it's important, but I do want to thank you and recognize the work that you do. I feel we need each other, that we're at our best when we work together, when we're taking on the challenges that we collectively face and leaning in, all carrying our part of the laboring oar. So let me say thank you in advance for all your great work. And I'm grateful to be here with all of you. I want to thank Housing California for convening us, for your leadership over many, many years. And just thank you all for being housing and housing justice warriors and champions. And we have been able to make progress, but we have a lot of work to do. And so let me share some of my thoughts on that as we move ahead. It's no understatement, as you all know, all too well, to say that we are in a housing crisis, that we are in a state of emergency. And in my view, when we're in a state of emergency, we're in a crisis, we need to do what you do in those moments. It's all hands on deck, all tools in the toolbox. Everyone working, pulling all the levers, doing everything we can to make a difference. And so that's how we view the work at the California Department of Justice. We are very cognizant that we have the largest homelessness population in the nation right here in our great state of California, that just less than half of Californians rent their homes, and of those, over half spend more than a third of their income on rent. And that's for the folks who are renting, and not to mention those who are trying to buy at housing prices that are getting further and further out of reach. Now in California, the single-family home median price is just under $800,000, more in places like here, Long Beach, or Los Angeles, or Orange County. And we know, we've all seen the data, we need to build 2 million, 2.5 million, 3 million, somewhere between 2 million and 3 million more homes in California before 2030. We are not on pace to do that. We are not on pace. We are, on average, building only about 100,000 new homes in California each year. So there are many barriers, many challenges. Meanwhile, we are also seeing that there are some, few but some, landlords who are engaged in discriminatory conduct, arbitrary conduct, retaliatory conduct, that there are illegal housing restrictions based on protected characteristics like race and sexual orientation or source of income. So there are many challenges out there, and I'll just say it, it is wrong, it's unacceptable. We cannot accept the unacceptable, and it's unjust. And I know I share the sentiment with all of you in this room that we will do everything in our power to change that set of status quo conditions. And that's how we see the role of the California Department of Justice. I've always seen my position as being the people's attorney, making the people's fights, your fights, Californians' fights, my fights. And chief among them is making California more affordable, a more affordable place to live, making housing more accessible to more people. And I believe that people should be able to live near where they work, that they should be able to live in the communities where they grew up, that if they have lived in a community for generations in their family, they should be able to remain there without being pushed out or displaced. I believe that the dream of home ownership should be available to all Californians, not just a pipe dream. And so we have work to do if we are going to create those sets of just conditions. And so we set about to turn our views, our concerns into action. And so we created our Housing Justice Unit for the first time in the history of the California Department of Justice and the Attorney General's office. You know what you prioritize by what you put resources into, what you create permanent structures and systems for, and we wanted to plant a flag by creating our housing justice team, earlier called our Housing Strike Force. We've rebranded and renamed it. And we've been hard at work. We have, I was in the legislature before I became the Attorney General, proudly for 8 great years, just over, and I was honored to be the author of and supporter of many critical housing initiatives, bills that create by right housing and expedited housing, streamlined housing, laws that protect our tenants, like the Tenant Protection Act, which I was a co-author with Assemblymember David Chu. Important investments in addressing homelessness and building more housing. And now as the Attorney General, I have the honor and pleasure of enforcing those laws, implementing those laws, and making sure that they're not just theories and ideas that sit on a shelf and gather dust, but they do what they were always intended to do. Make a difference in the lives of real people, change their lives, transform their lives, make their lives better, what public service is all about. And so I do want to say on the very important principle and value I have of collaborating and partnering, working together, I want to say very publicly right here, thank you to HCD, thank you to Director Velasquez, thank you to the whole team. We are proud to be your partner. We're proud to work with you. We think we make a great team, and together we've been active enforcing the laws of the state of California, whether it's a housing element that you are not in compliance with, whether it's streamlined housing laws like SB 9 or others, SB 35. We are saying to the jurisdictions throughout this state, you need to participate in our collective solution. You need to build some housing and build it in your jurisdiction, consistent with state law. Thank you. And we're telling our local jurisdictions, none of you need to do everything, but everyone needs to do something. You need to build some housing, and then another jurisdiction will build housing, and then another. And collectively, in aggregate, we will make significant progress towards achieving our collective goals in the state of California. And as a member of the legislature, I saw the state voiced through the legislature get more and more impatient about local jurisdictions not doing their part, about too many places being NIMBY. And so the laws have changed, and the laws are clear. And when we have long-time foot draggers failing to comply with the law, we get involved. When a city seeks to self-declare itself a mountain lion sanctuary to avoid implementation of existing state law, we say, are you serious? When other cities are brazenly violating the law, like Huntington Beach, brazen, deliberate, intentional, knowing. They are violating the law and they know they're violating it. And it's wrong. And so we don't wish to take you to court. We wish to work with you if you are able to work in good faith, do your part, and follow the law. But if you don't, we'll sue you and we will win. And we have. And there are many success stories in our collective work. Again, so much of this work with HCD. La Cañada Flint Ridge very recently determined by a court, you can't self-certify your housing element. You can't. Not something that you think you'd have to go to court for, but we did. We worked with Coronado, one of the long time out of compliance jurisdictions in California, to get on pace, to get on track, to have a housing element that will be in compliance. And so thank you to them for being willing to act in good faith, to work with us, to move from being out of compliance to in compliance. That's the spirit that will get us to where we need to go. And we have there's no specific type of jurisdiction that we are focused on. And unfortunately, it runs the gamut. We've been involved with Elk Grove and Pasadena as well, as they have failed to follow the law, and we've had to take action to get them in compliance. So we don't seek going to court. We want our cities to work with us, and we are grateful that we've seen the influence and the impact of this work in comments from the dais, from city council members who are saying, we need to follow this law. If we don't, HCD and the Attorney General's office are going to let us know. Or we see it in the minutes. And that is the message that we want to send. It's a simple one, I think a very reasonable one. Follow the law, act in good faith, do your part, and help us address our housing crisis. And so we will continue to make progress. There's more to do, but we're excited about the progress we've made already, the impact that we've had, the statement that we've made. And this work is certainly about building more housing, but not exclusively about building more housing. It's also about protecting our tenants, making sure that those who rent the place they call home, who deserve a safe and affordable place to live, are not in fear of being evicted into homelessness. That they will have landlords who follow the rules, who follow the law. And unfortunately, that hasn't always been the case, and so we've had to get involved, whether it be with Green Valley Corporation or Invitation Homes, which owns and manages approximately 12,000 rental homes across California, or Wedgwood. We have ensured that they follow the law, and when they didn't, are held accountable. And that's an important message that we want to send to all of our landlords across the state of California. And, one of the things I thought wrongfully when I was in the state legislature was that all the laws that we thought of and envisioned and implemented, that they would be implemented just the way they were designed, that they would be enforced, and they would touch the lives of the people we envision they would touch. But now that I'm in the executive branch, and I'm a big fan of the executive branch, by the way, I am grateful for this incredible role in the Attorney General's office. Laws are only as strong as the enforcement behind them. And so it's important that we enforce. It's also important that the rights and protections that are afforded to Californians are known by those who enjoy them. And so we have been hard at work making sure we are alerting and advising Californians about their existing rights and protections, whether it be the protections of the Tenant Protection Act, which protects you ensures that you have only just cause evictions and that you cannot be evicted for a discriminatory or arbitrary or retaliatory reason. We've also made it clear what rights are with respect to security deposits and the eviction process, what is an appropriate eviction and what is not, including the fact that being locked out of your home, having your utilities turned off, or putting your items, your personal possessions onto the curb are not appropriate ways to be evicted, and we put it in different languages to be accessible to as many Californians as possible. So there are many places to make progress on many areas where we need to lean in together, and the good news is we're making progress. Together, collectively, we are at our best when we're working together, when we take care of one another, look after each other, when we commit to a California that is affordable to all. And it starts with a vision and a commitment, and it also requires that magic that I've always seen in politics that's been the most transformative, what I call, because I'm a crazy sports fan, the inside-outside game, where those who are advocating, the nonprofit leaders of this great state are working together. Community leaders are rising up, and activists are saying we need to do more. And then those in elected office, those with positional power, those with authority team up together and carry the load and turn the vision into reality and into action. And we are doing that in real time right now. So I want to say all of the goals and dreams that you have for what we can do with housing in California, we can do it. We can. And it requires us to stay committed. Sometimes progress is not linear. It operates in zigs and zags. Sometimes you take a couple steps forward and then a couple back. Sometimes there are delays and pauses, obstacles and pitfalls. But as long as we continue to share that mission and that vision, we can make progress. And you know, I've always said that the laws of the state of California, they are not suggestions, they are not options, they are not proposals, they are the law. And so we will continue to do our part at the California Attorney General's office to make sure that the great, supportive, pro-housing, pro-tenant laws of the state of California are enforced, and that we continue to do our part. So we can fight for more housing in our backyards and win. And let me just say this. Thank you to all the YIMBYs in this room. Thank you to the YIMBY movement. You have changed what is possible in California for the better. And it's taken courage, and it's been a movement that I've seen built in real time over the course of my elected office career. When I started in the city council in a Bay Area city that was very NIMBY, and now is the opposite, and that's changed in just over a decade. And so for those who fought in the trenches and wondered if you were making progress and worried if there would ever be a day where your view of more housing and more housing justice and an affordable California for all was possible, you're making it happen. We can fight for affordable housing and supportive services and win, and we have. We can protect tenants and build housing and still enjoy all that makes our communities unique and beautiful, that character in our communities can be maintained. And you are all proof that when we stand together, there's nothing that we can't do, that the biggest challenges of this great state are overcomable, and that we can achieve our dreams and our vision. Part of what's being great is also recognizing when we're falling short of our standards. California is great, the greatest state in the nation. As we know, soon to be the 4th largest economy in the world, a place where we have lived and thrived with diversity, and we are not doing all that we can and should do when it comes to housing. And we can and we will do more, and we can and will do it together. Thanks for having me.
Please give another big round of applause to the Attorney General. Before we dive into this morning's conversation with more of our amazing statewide leaders here from our California agencies, I want to take a moment to thank U.S. Bank for serving as our title sponsor this morning. Please enjoy the following video from U.S. Bank while Lisa Gutierrez, Director of Business Development for Affordable Housing for U.S. Bank, joins us on the stage for a few remarks. Come on up, Lisa.
We're financial partners with heart. Every day, we deliver financial solutions that create lasting impacts for people and the planet. For more than 30 years, we've mobilized capital to meet our customers' financial goals and help build thriving communities, drive more equitable access to capital, and accelerate the transition to a green economy. We bring a collective mindset dedicated to helping our customers build better futures, one where success goes beyond the balance sheet and is measured by more than just dollars and cents. Whether we're helping create affordable housing, spur economic activity in underserved communities, restore historic buildings, develop renewable sources of energy, or strengthen CDFIs and other intermediaries. We work closely with our customers to consider not only what and how we do things, but more importantly, who will be impacted. Today, our tools and expertise are needed more than ever. Backed by the strength and stability of U.S. Bank, we're positioned to help bring even the most complex projects to life. Committed to financial solutions that drive real and lasting change. We're U.S. Bancorp Impact Finance.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Gutierrez with U.S. Bancorp Impact Finance, a subsidiary of U.S. Bank, and we are thrilled to be a title sponsor of this year's Housing California Conference. I've had the privilege of being part of countless affordable housing projects across the state. And in California, U.S. Bank has provided over $4.23 billion of tax equity and over $6 billion in debt for the creation and preservation of affordable housing. We are proud of the work we've had the opportunity to finance. Every single project is significant because of a difference it makes in a community and in the lives of real people. We believe everyone deserves a place to call home. And it's because of colleagues, partners, and friends in this room that we are making a reality for an increasing number of Californians. As many of you know, U.S. Bank acquired Union Bank last year. We are continuing to invest in our California communities to help drive meaningful change. Our U.S. Bank Access Commitment work, which is our long-term approach to help close the wealth gap for underserved communities, including communities of color, and redefines how we serve employees, clients, and communities. Through Access Commitment, we're making measurable change. With Access Business, it combines our expertise and that of our external partners to provide small business owners with information, connections, and capital to position them for success. With Access Capital, led by our Impact Finance team, who partners with CDFIs to provide financing for developers that have historically lacked access to capital. And Access Home is a multi-year commitment to focus on closing the homeownership gap, starting first with the Black community, where the disparities are the largest. As part of Access Home, we created a new mortgage loan officer training and development program to further our efforts this year. We plan to expand the program to train more Spanish-speaking mortgage loan officers. I often say our industry is a fierce group of competitors vying for the attention of our clients, competing for public funding awards, or an RFP to win the development rights of a specific project. But we are amazing collaborators when it comes to advocating for new policy and sharing new and innovative ways to build and finance more housing. I want to encourage all of us to continue innovating and collaborating so we can help shape the future of housing and touch people's lives in one of the most significant ways by giving them a place to call home. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to share what's important about U.S. Bank. And now it's on with the program. It's my privilege to introduce the rest of this morning's plenary. California is leading the nation in developing and implementing innovative and transformative housing and homelessness solutions. During this morning's plenary, you will have the opportunity to meet the state leaders challenging the status quo and bringing to fruition the dream of a California with homes, health, prosperity for all in thriving, sustainable communities. During this moderated discussion, you will learn what's working, what's on the horizon for state policies and programs, how California leaders are thinking of challenges, and the pivotal role advocates play in shaping the future of housing and homelessness. Bernadette Austin, CEO of CivicWell, will facilitate the dialogue with our esteemed panel of state leaders and thinkers that have joined us. Bernadette and the plenary speakers, please join me on stage. Thank you, everyone.
Well, welcome, folks. I have to say that usually, historically, that last night of this conference tends to be the big party. So if you are here, you really want to hear from this panel. Very excited that you all made it. So I'll mention that I've been attending this conference since my very first job out of grad school. This panel has been my favorite one, and it is a total honor to be sharing the stage with these leaders this morning. So this discussion is really critical right now. As many of us in the room are contemplating the uncertainty that lies ahead with the state budget, with the federal election outcomes, and the landscape that are related to those too. While we look ahead about how we can advance justice and equity, we are embracing innovative new housing solutions. So we're getting to hear from this esteemed panel of folks who are leading the state agencies and to get their insights on their visions that they have and how they approach their aspirational leadership. We're also here to discuss the urgent actions and cross-sector collaborations that we all need to continue to do to advance housing justice. So each of these panelists are addressing our state's housing crisis from a very different vantage point, and they're leading work that is critical to ensure that every Californian has access to a safe and affordable home. So in a moment, I'll introduce each of you individually, and I might start actually working this way around. And as you introduce yourself, I would like to hear, what opportunities do you see to move the needle on housing justice in California? So we'll start at the end with HCD. So Gustavo Velasquez, who is the director of the California Department of Housing and Community Development.
Thank you, Bernadette. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I just want to take a moment to congratulate Housing California, Shioni and her team, the volunteers, the staff for putting such a great conference. I had the opportunity to be here all day yesterday, and it's just great, at least if it's once a year, for people with similar values and aspirations to come together and mingle and learn from each other. And by the way, that was an amazing speech by the Attorney General, so calm and so clear. It's great to see state-elected leaders speak to us in just with the same language and again, the same aspirations. And to housing justice, I would say housing justice is social justice. You just heard the Attorney General really talk about that. And that's because when you have housing stability, you have a great opportunity to have access to opportunity. And when you do that, and you are in a community that has an unequal or an uneven playing field, then that's going to result in achieving the aspirations of social justice. And no community in our state is immune from disparities to access to opportunity. A home, you heard this many, many times, a home is not just the structure, it's the opportunity to have access to an inclusive community that offers good schools and good transportation options and clean air and clean water and good food options and healthcare facilities. For many, many years, researchers have conclusively determined, after tracking families, especially with children, over many, many periods of time, that communities that are inclusive and offer this type of opportunities, those children will grow up into adulthood with far, far better earning potential, far, far better outcomes in life. You heard President Obama many years ago say your zip code is more of a determinant of your success than your own DNA, and it is true. So at the state of California, HCD and my colleagues here on the stage, we are determined to design and implement programs with an equity lens. Equity is front and center of the work that we do. At HCD, for example, we cannot accept housing plans from local jurisdictions, housing elements, without having concrete actions and strategies of how to overcome patterns of segregation and concentration of poverty, the efforts to affirmatively further fair housing. And we are seeing right now 40% of the state that is still non-compliance, localities that are still non-compliance. The majority of those non-compliance jurisdictions are so because they have not put forth strategies to overcome the legacy of segregation, have not done enough to further fair housing. Housing discrimination, the Attorney General talked about, is something that we are laser focused with his office, with the Department of Civil Rights. We just won a case here in Anaheim, not too far from here, where a locality was denying women access to transitional housing, women that experience mental health challenges. We won that case, knowing that persons with disabilities are some of the most discriminated people in the housing market by the number of the housing discrimination complaints filed nationwide and in the state of California. So we have to eliminate racial bias, discrimination in housing, and the structures that have perpetuated concentration of poverty for so many years. And on the financing side, I will end with this. On the financing side, we are very much focused to also close the disparities by determining what are the priorities that the state has in financing and subsidizing the creation of housing. A notable point in that is specific pools of funding for tribal communities. We've taken the land of tribal communities, and even though the outcomes are not there yet, we are decisively intentional in making sure that specific funding from the state goes to tribal communities to close the incredible gap, the incredible disparity that exists between our brothers and sisters in Native American communities and other communities. So those are a few examples of the things that we are doing to achieve housing and social justice.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that financing piece is a really critical, thank you, yes. That financing piece is a really critical component, so let's hear from that same question for Cal HFA. Tina Johnson-Hall, Executive Director, what are your perspectives on that topic?
Good morning. I've got a lot of perspectives on this. But I want to start also by thanking Chione and her incredible staff. This is an incredible conference. It gives us all a little bit of time to connect, converse, and think about ways that we could do the great work that we've all bought into for so many years, some of us. And I'm equally excited as Chione about the new folks that are coming on board. Beautiful to see that happening in real time. So as you know, Cal HFA's role in this housing group is as the state's affordable housing lender. And we are charged with finding lending solutions so that we could do more deals or put more people in homes, do more deals in the area of multifamily, and so on. And we do this essentially by raising capital in the bond market. This means that we work in an environment where many times our partners are looking at us and at the work that we do from a business perspective, and frankly, we are a business. So when I think about housing justice and the perspective, it's really quite interesting because I work for the state of California, and let's face it, government-sponsored racism that was perpetuated by businesses, especially in the housing space, we were one of the biggest problems with that because we sanctioned it. We legislated it. We followed those rules for so many decades, and so many people were hurt by it. So as a result, it is imperative, we have a special responsibility to change it, because we're here. And I don't know if you looked at this panel, look at it really closely. Look at the folks that are represented here.
Right.
We come from families of color. We come from families that have immigrants. I'm one of those. I'd probably cover a lot of those categories. And so we know what makes sense to the communities, and we also know what makes sense economically, and we also know what should make sense legislatively, and we're all charged with the responsibility of changing it. And that's exactly what we're going to do. My good friend, that's exactly what we're going to do. There's no going back. No. We are all working under an executive order which basically says that you will include that in your business plan, that you will make folks who do business with us accountable, and that you will report the results as well. We all have to report it. And we all want to. That's the thing, we want to. So this isn't about charity it's about doing the right thing. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Thank you very much.
Pass it on.
So I know there's a lot of familiar faces out there for me. I spent 10 years working in affordable housing, and I have the opportunity to work on some of those co-benefit pieces. So our next couple of panelists are looking not just at housing, but how housing fits into other aspects of the work that we all are trying to do. So same question, what opportunities do you see to move the needle on housing justice in California? First, we're going to hear from Lynn Von Koch-Liebert from the Strategic Growth Council.
Thank you, Bernadette. And good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to be with you all today. I have a confession. This is actually my first time at Housing California.
Welcome.
Yeah. But it will not be my last. I'm so inspired to see everybody who's here, and also so comforted, because I know that the work that everybody's doing, it's challenging, it's hard, it's complex, it takes a long time, and it helps to be together where we can commemorate and commiserate and really get reinvigorated for the work that's coming forward, because the work that we're doing is so important. The Strategic Growth Council, you know, we sit in a really different place within the state. We are tasked with really thinking about those nexus places on where the built environment can be built in a way that supports our goals around equity, around climate, on affordability. How we can be doing more with the resources that we have, and more to support the vision to create healthy, thriving, resilient communities all across California. And so when I think about housing equity, in addition to the incredible comments from Gustavo and Tina, I also think about the role that housing plays in terms of climate change. We just know that when we're building affordable housing, when we're thinking about where it's located, who we're building for, how we're supporting the residents, there is such a cross-section between communities that are underserved and the impact of climate change. These are the communities that often feel the burden of climate change more than anybody else. It's disproportionate in terms of the physical impact, the mental impact, the health impacts. And so when we think about housing and we think about where we're building housing, how we're building housing, whose vision and voices we're including in that design, we really do need to be thinking about the impacts of climate change as well. Because there's kind of the proverbial we in terms of where we're building makes incredible differences in terms of vehicles mile traveled and reduction of greenhouse gases. And so it's on us to be thinking about placement in ways that reduces travel, that gets us out of cars, that gets us into transit, that builds communities in ways that it's walkable, that you're able to get to your daily destinations in a way that makes sense for residents. But then we also need to be thinking about the impact for residents and the individuals who are living in these houses. Thinking about if they have exposure to gas, thinking about if the materials and the conditions that the housing has been built in is going to actually help with equitable health outcomes. But I think that we have the ideas, we have the technology, we have now more and more resources, which we'll get to later in this conversation, to be able to be thinking more expansively about housing, how housing is and can be part of our climate solution in California. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Great, Lynn.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, we're going to hear from Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, also one of those umbrella organizations. Love to hear from our Deputy Secretary, Dakshika Wickrama. You can let us know about your perspectives on that same question.
Thank you, Bernadette. It's lovely to be here. Shioni, thank you for really convening us. As you've heard from the other panelists, and you said yourself, this is really an opportunity to think about our pipeline, who's coming up behind us. So we're so thrilled to hear about the younger generation who's here. I look probably younger than I am, but I'm actually quite old, I feel. But also, Dr. Ink, thank you for really setting the stage also for some of this conversation around who's in the room, whose voices are included, and how we can all do better to include kind of the voices of those who are impacted and affected. So really, I'm going to start, Bernadette, by again reminding everybody, which I know everybody knows, that this is such an intersectional issue, and this is a multi-sector problem. Yeah. So whatever we do, we have to think about, and this is what I'm most excited about, thinking how we can drive really more relationships and partnerships, as we heard from the Attorney General's office, but also thinking about how we can then kind of track how are we doing. And I'm going to talk a bit about data. So we know what works in large to extent, but it's really scaling up and replication. And you heard from my new boss, Secretary Tamika Moss, yesterday, where she really talked about housing justice is racial justice. So given that kind of statement, I'm really looking forward to working with the new secretary and a little bit about the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, which I know is a mouthful. That agency actually includes Director Velasquez and Director Tina Johnson, because we do a lot around housing production housing finance. We also have the Civil Rights Department under umbrella that does a lot of kind of protections of tenants and protections of people who are trying to rent housing with public subsidies. But we also have the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, which is a body that does grant making. It also does some policy and data work, which I'll get to it a bit, and what I'm excited to work on over the next 2 years. And it also has a state council. So I'm going to talk a bit about collaboration and data at the state level, at the local level, and at the federal level. So at the state level, we as the state family really need to roll up our collective sleeves and get our house in order as well around partnerships and multi-sector kind of collaborations. So one way we are doing this is through the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, and Gustavo and Tina are on that body, but it is co-chaired by Secretary Tamika Moss and the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Human Services to really drive that kind of multi-sector partnership. There's an action plan that we are working on, which is really looking at how does the state take joint actions. How do we think about people who are unhoused, who are housing insecure as our shared clients, our shared population, and work together to really break down barriers to work across sectors. And then we are also looking at data to think about how are we tracking our performance across different metrics at the local level and at the state level, including measures around overrepresented populations. And I spoke about including voices that haven't been included in the past. We have a lived experience advisory board. We have an advisory committee that includes community voices, including Housing California actually, and people with lived experience. And we have a tribal nations liaison that in fact, shout out to Megan Marshall, our executive officer of Cal ICH. She's actually visiting tribal nations today because it's important to kind of hear from them and really work with them as sovereign nations. So that's a little bit around the state side, how we're trying to think about collaboration, joint actions, and system performance. At the local level, some of you may know, there is a grant program called HAP, which is really for the first time this year mandating regional collaboration, where if you're a county, and this grant goes out to all 58 counties, the 14 big cities, and the 44 COCs, these are federally mandated entities that work across the state to serve people experiencing homelessness. They have to come in jointly. So if you're LA County, I'll take the most complex example. There's a county with 2 big cities and 4 COC jurisdictions. They all have to come in jointly with an MOU that specify what the county's role is around health services and other kinds of mainstream services, the city around land use and all those kinds of decisions around building what's needed for people. And on the COC side, the continuum of care and coordination of federal funds and local funds and state funds. So those applications are due March 27. So we are looking forward to, again, driving collaboration at the state level and at the local level through these kinds of mechanisms. And then finally, at the federal level, you may have heard yesterday, I was on a workshop called All Inside to really think about how state of California and 6 jurisdictions across the nation are working with the federal government, 19 federal agencies, to reduce barriers across systems to make sure people who are unhoused and housing insecure can access housing faster and in a more effective manner. So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to working on, and I really think that's one way to provide more access, which again, to rephrase what Secretary Tamika Moss said, housing justice really is racial justice.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm very interested in how we can find more alignment in these same communities that are challenged, whether it's communities or demographic communities that are facing some of these same challenges. I want to stay on this kind of concept of co-benefits. So Lynn and Dashika, if you'd like to also weigh in. We know that people don't live in silos and experience housing challenges within a context of many other issues. So I'd love to hear your insights on how we can address co-benefits through housing investments. And if you have any examples, we'd love to hear them.
Sure. I'd love to start. And I always love to bring examples too, because one of the joys of my job, and I'm sure it's the same with many folks here, is actually getting to visit the locations where housing is being built and where residents are being served. And I think that when you're there and you feel that moment when you walk towards one of the affordable housing properties and you start to see things feeling a little bit different, right? It's, you know, I was thinking about just a couple months ago, I was able to go to one of the open houses for Legacy Gardens, which is in Santa Ana. And you walk in and it's this incredible property where it's enormous. It's like, it's a very, very big property. It's been co-developed with a church where there was land that was underutilized. So you walk in and you already feel this sense of spirit and compassion and empathy, and then kind of you see the kind of the historic elements being added in where you're keeping some of the beauty that was in the building, and you're adding all this incredible affordable housing units. And then you keep going in and you see art, you see culture. You see the spirit of the residents who are there being brought into the process to co-design the services, which include workforce development. You see that if you go behind the building, you see it's right on the Metrolink. So the residents are going to be able to have the opportunity to just go out their door and 2 minutes later be on transit. You also see the sidewalk improvements, you see the road improvements, you see how the experience that somebody has in being able to move through their life has been improved because of how holistic these buildings are being built. Then you also learn that, and then bus passes have been provided as part of this project. So not only are we using these spaces to be able to improve people's affordability, to help shape and access opportunities, but also there are all these incredible benefits like the urban greening that goes into the development of the properties, the sidewalk improvement, the transit improvement, the access to transportation, the benefits that has to the transit system, who we all know are having immense challenges, to think about how we are making these systems connect and work together in much more cohesion, so that it's simple, so that it's easy, so that getting on that bus, getting on that metro is an easy decision for somebody to make every day. And it doesn't make things harder for them, it actually increases access, it increases affordability. And so I think when we are thinking about co-benefits, it's so important to always go back to that frame of mind in terms of what are we trying to create, how is the experience going to help shape somebody's outcomes, and how importantly are those outcomes and that vision brought all the way forward so that the residents are part of that design. Because we know if we don't bring community, if we don't bring residents into these discussions, if we don't think about what it is that who's going to be living there and how they want to use that building, we might not get it right. And so I think about these co-benefits not as a way of thinking about how do we go across all of our different policy spaces and make sure we're checking all of our boxes from our policy outcomes, but how does it work cohesively so that somebody has a better way of living. I do think that we just really, really can't understate, though, the importance quantitatively of what developments do when they're built in a way that increases that access to transit. And really does think about climate as one of the holistic benefits that comes from the way that we're building housing. We just know that we need to be building in a more dense fashion. We need to be focusing on transit-oriented development. We need to be focusing on infill. We need to be thinking about how we're building and supporting communities that already are existing instead of continuing to go out and out and out. Because we know that that's not sustainable. It's hard to make the cost calculations up front, but when you look across the entire spectrum in terms of long-term maintenance and operations and system design and utility connections, it actually does seem to make the economic sense for us to be pulling in closer, to be developing inwardly, to be thinking about how we can be reinvesting in communities that already exist and are already there in a way that's going to be better for communities and better for the planet. So I think that's just maybe my big thing about this multi-benefit nature is that think about the outcomes, think about what it means for an individual who's living in these spaces, and think about how collectively all of those decisions roll up to helping us solve some of our bigger challenges we have around climate change and some of the really important decisions we're making today that are going to be shaping future generations in California.
Right. You're speaking my language, absolutely. Dr. Shikha, do you have anything to share on that perspective as well?
Yes. I think, everything Lynn said, but I would like to also go a little further on some other areas. So for example, people say it a lot now, but at one point this was brand new, maybe about 15, 20 years ago, that housing is really a determinant of health.
Right, absolutely.
And I think people now say that and don't think about where that kind of came from. And I was remembering it really came from some health literature where HIV patients were being housed or unhoused. And what they found really and published was that when you were housed, the HIV patient was actually more likely to take their medication and viral loads actually went down. So that always reminds me like how important housing is just for stability, for people's health, for the children going to school and feeling like they can do their homework in a place without doing it in a car, for people who are older, not feeling isolated. So one of the things our agency is going to do more of, and I'm sure Gustavo and Tina will hear more of it during the shout out March 27th, is the next Cal-ICH Council meeting. So please tune in, it's a public meeting, and you'll hear more about the state action plan, as well as the work around data integration and exchange. But we really want to do more as an agency around this collaboration between housing and healthcare.
Exactly.
I'm sure there were a lot of panels yesterday. I think there's a panel this afternoon on CalAIM and healthcare dollars and how those can be matched to housing dollars. Why is that important? Bernadette mentioned the housing deficit, the budget deficit, sorry, there's a deficit of housing too, but there's a budget deficit, and this actually in some ways drives us to do more around our mainstream partners, around climate change, but also healthcare, but infrastructure. So I would argue all of those places, transportation is housing, infrastructure is housing, climate change is housing, healthcare is housing. How do we really think about talking to those partners, making the case to the education system that we have shared goals? And how do we really think about marrying those dollars? So when you say core benefits, I just see so many ripple effects around mainstream actors that we need to do more to kind of bring into our space and build that bigger tent for so many reasons. But that's really how I like to kind of take a broad approach to see how many more people we can get on our side and have them come to Housing California in future years.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. So I'd like to stay on this kind of concept of co-benefits and pivot more to economic opportunity. So Tina, this is a question for you. Your work has really aimed to connect housing investments with a larger vision for economic security and community development. And I love what you both said about centering the people that it impacts. And so my question to you is, how are you thinking about strategies to close deeply racialized disparities in wealth?
All right, I'm going to take a little bit more time on this one. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are responsible for doing lending in the affordable housing space under the home ownership arm. Our down payment assistance programs are designed to do just that. We help first-time home buyers. We give them a little extra push so they can get over the hump and get into a home, many of them for the very first time. The people that we help, the facts is that we're the first step towards building generational wealth for those families many times. And it also opens up a spot for someone on the rental side to find a place to stay as well. In the last 5 years, we have helped more than 40,000 people get into a home for the very first time. And since CalHFA took on the responsibility of home ownership, we have helped close to 250,000 people get into a home for the first time since the early 70s. About 65% of the people that we help identify as something other than white, and that's not by accident. First, we're very intentional about designing our programs to align with the needs of historically disadvantaged communities, and our outreach and business partnerships reflect that intention as well. And then in addition to that, the administration and the legislature have seen fit to allocate money to CalHFA, which we have used to design programs so that we reach even deeper into those underserved communities. So a few years ago, you might recall that we ran a forgivable loan program. and provided a 10% down payment assistance to about 2,000 first-time home buyers at 80% of AMI. And those loans will be forgiven in 5 years. So 5 years, the loan that we gave them evaporates. All the appreciation goes to the folks that get into those homes. This is a program, frankly, that no one thought would work. But these families from all over the state qualified for a mortgage under traditional, conventional standards. All it took was a little bit of extra assistance. That program closed, but now we have the California Dream for All program, which is a 20% shared appreciation down payment assistance loan. And so once again, these funds from the state that have been allocated will be used to help these folks get into a home for the first time. The first time we did the program, the money was gone in 11 days. Many of you probably remember that. Now we have an opportunity to, in this next phase of the California Dream for All, I want you all to come to our table and pick it up and get the information to your friends and families. But under Dream for All 2, just to summarize, we found that we needed to get a little bit deeper and give folks a little bit more opportunity to find a home and get into this program. And so what we've done is reduce the AMI requirements from 150 to 120%. We also popped it open so that some of the threshold requirements include first-time home buyers, but also first-generation home buyers as well. So what does that mean, 120% AMI? Well, in Los Angeles, it means that you are a person that is earning $155,000. In Orange County, it's $202,000. In Ventura, $195,000. San Bernardino, $149,000. I could go on and on. But I will tell you that a teacher's salary in Long Beach Unified School District, on the average, is $88,000. That tells you, all by itself, that we are using this program to help a lot of people, and not the people that you think they are. They are your cousins, your friends, they're your family members. They're people that you go to work with every day. I found out loud that some of those people work with me, and they can't afford to buy a home here in California. That's unacceptable. But now we have an opportunity, and we all need to take advantage of it because it's the right thing to do.
Right, thank you. Gustavo's been waiting patiently, so how about we give him 2 questions back to back? Sounds great. So Gustavo, during the pandemic, HomeKey became a cornerstone to our housing strategy and our state's efforts to address homelessness. So our question to you is, as you think about what we've learned and where we are today, what do you see as a critical ingredients to sustain our progress and grow our success?
Well, thank you for that question. We're very proud. The governor is very proud of HomeKey. When Lynn and Dakshikar describing the types of projects that bring about so many, benefits, not just one. We spend a lot of time in Sacramento thinking about what goes into the blender to come out with the best public benefit, and it's hard. It's hard because there's so many competing priorities. HomeKey was born out of both a tragic and also opportunistic moment at the height of the pandemic. Diane Yantel yesterday at the plenary reminded us that we have a tremendous challenge in the housing market, but we also have to celebrate the wins, our successes, and collectively we have so many here. And she reminded us how many lives we saved during the pandemic, how many people we spared from eviction when they were losing their jobs, their incomes. And HomeKey was an opportunity to go and offer owners of hotels and motels the opportunity to sell at a time when they were being decimated by the closures of the pandemic. And 3.5 years later, we have 253 projects. I'm gonna give you a lot of numbers here, but they're relevant. 13,000 units of interim and permanent supportive housing that have been created. And when it comes to public benefit, this is the #1 priority, to find interim and permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness. Now, it's not just that, right? We understand that we need to have an all-hands approach to this: emergency, interim, permanent housing to house the homeless. But HomeKey has been a tremendous success because of the cost and the speed. And we have to use, the average cost per door of HomeKey is $203,000 when we're subsidizing 2 and 3 bedroom apartments at the $800,000 per door price tag. $203,000 average price. Yeah. Yep. And it's been hotels, motels at the start, but now it has just been transformed to use vacant buildings and to repurpose office and to use factory built and modular housing. And just all of these amazing innovations that are coming from local communities in partnership with developers and service providers. Mm-hmm. Now, HomeKey has its problems. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. We're gonna be thinking a lot about HomeKey a few years from now because we have to sustain this housing over a long period of time, and it's going to require a lot of subsidy, and we're going to have to come back to the table and figure that out. Mm-hmm. Right. But all in all, we have to celebrate this great success because we need to replicate models like this that exempt projects from CEQA, that use land use conformity, that can be within a year off the ground and welcoming residents. And out of the 13,000 units, 9,000 units are online. They're either welcoming residents or they're about to welcome residents. So I just think that we have an opportunity to use HomeKey for replication. We're talking about repurposing office, commercial. HomeKey gives us an opportunity to think about what is the next frontier to reduce cost and bring to scale the type of housing we need at the speed that we need it. And HomeKey just gives us really that opportunity.
Yeah, really appreciate that. That deserves a round of applause for folks. So, I described a lot of these folks as visionary leaders, and I'll tell you, the best leaders I know, we have to have a sense of humility. We have to pause, reflect, and be held accountable for the work that we're doing. So my next question then for you, Gustavo, and then Dashika, if you'd like to weigh in on this one. Our state is making great progress, actually, on housing accountability efforts, but there's more work to be done, in particularly how we hold our regions accountable. There was also a question in Hoover that posed, that asked more about this accountability question around No Place Like Home and MHSA. So my question for you, Gustavo, and then if you'd like to answer as well, what's currently happening on the accountability front, and how are you thinking about improving housing accountability systems?
Yeah, well, the Attorney General spoke a lot about that during his speech. We have a shortage of 2.5 million homes in the next roughly 6-7 years. We are producing and preserving just a fraction of that housing, and while we're losing a lot of housing because of expiration of affordability restrictions. So it's a serious concern. What the governor has done is a twofold approach to provide just resources, working with the state legislature, historic resources. Someone also yesterday said that we're using the word unprecedented, maybe misusing, overusing. Well, it is historic that this governor has invested more resources into the creation of affordable housing than no other governor before. And this is a problem that's been decades in the making until Governor Newsom came into office and sort of changed the dynamic, made it a top priority for the governor. And the state legislature is really working hand by hand. So it is about resources, and it is about the tools, the policy toolbox that the state codifies into law to facilitate, to really help. That's the approach, to help localities that are pro-housing, that want to do, that want to bring to scale the type of housing opportunities that is needed in their communities. And the creation of, 2 years ago, of HCD's Housing Accountability Unit. I know we have David Caesar, our Chief Accountability Officer, here in this conference. All the work that's been created with the Attorney General's office to first provide technical assistance, educate localities about what they need to do to have good housing plans, to execute on those plans with a myriad of streamlining laws. All that is really an effort that has paid quite well. We are, people are noticing that kind of forceful accountability and enforcement. And I think we're just gonna, as the Attorney General said, we're just gonna continue to press as hard as we can, because the scale of the problem is as big that it requires everybody to be held accountable to these housing shortage goals that we have.
Right. Thank you for that. So, Dr. Kidd, talk to me about the perspective from your agency. What are you doing to address this question of accountability at the implementation level?
And just a reminder, Bernadette, so I'm at the agency that's the umbrella agency within which HCD, Cal HFA, Cal ICH, and the Civil Rights Department sit. But just to piggyback on what Gustavo said, so I mentioned earlier that regionally coordinated application called HAP, which is a multi-year grant that provides flexible funds to all 58 counties, the 44 continuum of care regions, and the 14 big cities. And part of that application this year, it was a joint application with HCD, because we really wanted to kind of marry the housing piece with the homelessness piece. So in the application, applicants jointly will have to provide us updates on the housing element. They will have to kind of talk to us if they are contemplating becoming a pro-housing kind of entity, jurisdiction, and if not, where they are in that journey. Because we are trying to really think about how we bring together all these different forces so that people who are working on addressing homelessness, the crisis response, are also thinking about the solution to becoming homelessness, which is a home. And so we are really trying to think about, and accountability can mean so many things, but we are really trying to think about how do we really bridge those gaps at the local level so people are thinking about not just the crisis response, but the long-term solutions as well. The second thing I mentioned earlier, data. So one of the things the California Interagency Council on Homelessness does is it collects data from all the 44 continuum of care entities. And thank you to, I know there are a lot of frontline workers here. This is all your work that's captured when you prevent people from becoming homeless, when you intervene on the street, when you're serving people in interim housing, when you're helping them navigate to permanent housing. So thank you. All that work is being captured by each of the 44 continuum of care entities. And since 2021, and to Gustavo's point, this is kind of new energy, all brand new stuff, 2021, pretty new. There's now a database at the state level called the Homeless Data Integration System. And for the first time, the state now can collect the data, but does not collect and put it together. They clean, validate, deduplicate, send it back to the local jurisdictions, and the local jurisdictions have to use that data as baseline data against which they're tracking performance. There are 6 system performance measures, and it's things like how long are people remaining homeless before they are placed in housing? How often are people returning to homelessness after being placed in housing? So for example, I can tell you on that data point at the state level for the last 2 fiscal years, in line with national numbers, 91% of people, once they're placed in housing with services, remain housed. But about 9%, and that's all the good work of people providing services and housing. But 9% return. So what can we do to kind of reduce the rate of return? So that's another way, Bernadette, we're looking at accountability at the state level. But I also want to say the first thing is really technical assistance and making sure people understand where we want them to be. And then the mechanisms of the housing accountability can step in if people are just egregiously not kind of following through. But we are trying to address accountability at multiple levels.
Absolutely, thank you. That's, yeah. All right, so we did start our morning program a little bit later, so I want to get us back on track. So for each of you, if you want to take 1 minute, what's giving you hope right now? What's your call to action for the housers here today? So we'll start again with you and we'll end with Gustavo. So, yeah, so what's giving you hope and what's your call to action for our housers here today?
Well, I think this has been the theme, at least workshops I went yesterday and what I'm hearing today is really what's giving me hope is if the work is hard, the work is exhausting. But what gives me hope is knowing that there are all of us here today from different perspectives, doing different types of work, but we are persevering. Gustavo mentioned the pandemic. We learned how we can really deploy resources quickly and collectively, an army for good, as one of my previous bosses used to say in a different life when I worked in LA County. And so I'm really kind of hopeful and happy to be part of this army for good, trying to help the people in California who are housing insecure, experiencing homelessness, have been recently placed in housing and looking forward to the rest of their lives. So that's one thing that gives me hope, being part of this movement with all of you. The second thing that gives me hope is I feel there's a lot of political will, more than there has been before. And I think it's up to us, so call to action for all of you to kind of think about how you can kind of grow that tent of advocates. Go beyond the people you talk to normally, the status quo kind of compadres. Go to meetings, talk to other people, share the word around root causes of homelessness and solutions that work. And I think that would be my call to action, to really think about how we can grow this space.
Yeah, love that. Thank you so much. How about you, Lynn?
Great. I think I have two things I want to mention. So first is I'm really, really excited and inspired by the number of young professionals who are entering this space. So I'm here with my colleague Jessica Lopez, who many of you might know from the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities program, and she's part of the Merit Scholarship Program. And I learned, which is a great program.
Shout out.
And so Jessica, of course, is brilliant and could work anywhere, and she chooses this space, this passion area. But also what I learned yesterday is not only is she in this scholarship program, she herself is also a mentor to somebody else who's coming into this program.
Nice.
And so I'm so inspired by the young professionals who are choosing to make this their occupation, and for all of the innovation, the ideas, and the new systems thinking that they're going to bring to this space. The other, and then my call to action is I want us all to be looking really carefully at the federal energy money. We have this opportunity where there is a lot of money for decarbonization. Now, we all feel, and rightly so, that housing got left out a lot of the federal spending packages. It was not included as explicitly as I think any of us would have liked to have seen. But there are so many pathways where that energy money can help not only with our climate goals around decarbonization, but also to address some of the issues that we have around operations. Really thinking about how can you use renewable energy resources, financing from the federal government, public-private partnerships to reduce operating costs and bring those renewable energies to affordable housing properties. And so my call to action is to really be thinking expansively and openly about how we can be drawing more of those federal resources into California and specifically into affordable housing.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Dina?
So what's giving me hope these days? I'll start with the fact that 357 members of Congress approved the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. I mean, you can't get 357 members of Congress to approve a
Anything.
Coke, right? That was huge to me. What's also giving me hope is the FFB Risk Share Program, which is in partnership with the Housing Finance Agencies, HUD, and also the Federal Financing Bank. And basically, this program enables us to provide low-cost permanent financing, and that program was extended indefinitely. So cool. Then, what also gives me hope, I have to co-sign with Lynn on the fact of the folks like the Merit Scholarship programs. USC and UCLA also offer like programs that actually bring more folks to this business than ever before. And the ranks are very, those folks are so smart and diverse and committed. And it includes folks like my daughter who actually called me and said, Mom, I'll see you there. Yeah, that gives me hope. That gives me hope that the bench is deep.
Yes.
It gives me hope that there's a whole nother generation, and if one of us falls, like my buddy Murillo, there's 5 of y'all behind us to take up the flag. So I'm so grateful for that, and I'm so grateful to be in community, and so grateful to be asked to be a part of this panel.
Thank you.
Well, for me, thank you.
You're welcome.
For me, we mentioned, right, the level of investments. You know, budgets are cyclical. I know a lot of people are very concerned about the budget deficit that the state is facing today. Are cyclical. Let's not forget we come from 3 very, very good years where we're seeing right now new home permits that we haven't seen in 7, 8 years, and that's partly the result of a lot of focused and investment and policy making to accelerate and bring to scale the type of the level of housing that we need. But we need more allies with us, the housers. We need more allies in the healthcare industry so that things like CalAIM reform can help us pay for some of the housing services that are so critical for people who experience physical and mental health conditions and need desperately housing. We need more allies in the environmental community because they see the benefit of housing being created in a way that reduces climate effects. We need more allies in labor. We have made some good progress in the legislature with some proposals that where labor has said, yeah, this is a critical issue for the workers across the state, and we have to be on board. And I think there's movement in terms of our alliances that we are building, but to the extent that we can do more of that, and we can maybe see in the years to come a room full of housers, but also environmentalists and labor leaders and transportation experts and all. I think that's going to bring a level of momentum to our movement that is going to be critical to ensure that California continues to be the vibrant economy that we want it to be.
Yeah, we are so fortunate to have our leaders from HCD, CalHFA, Strategic Growth Council, and BCSH. If you could please join me in a round of applause for our speakers this morning. We'll follow this. Thank you.
Thank you again to our wonderful speakers for joining us today and for being our champions in state government. We couldn't do this work without you. Thank you to U.S. Bank for serving as the title sponsor of this morning's session. Before we close out the plenary and move into the remaining part of the conference, I just wanted to share a couple of announcements and provide a few closing remarks since we won't be coming back together in the big room again. First of all, I would like everyone to join me in giving a big round of applause for our conveners, our speakers, our sponsors, our partners, our Housing California staff who put on all of this for you. We couldn't do this without you and are so grateful to have our whole community on the journey with us. As we join together to create a California with homes, health, and wealth for all, we know we're going to have to grow our ranks, but it is such a gift that we have all of the folks in this room already here. We hope that you found inspiration, made new connections, and gathered knowledge to continue this work in California, in our communities, and our neighborhoods. I'd like to thank the conference center staff, the catering staff, the folks in the hotels. They have supported us in ways that we often don't notice or see, but we couldn't do this without them. They've been working with our team for almost a year to get us here. and I know have helped me and many of you in wonderful ways over the last couple of days. Please don't forget to fill out your end of conference survey in the Whova app. We do have some prizes. You might get a free trip to Housing California next year. And we look forward to seeing you all in Sacramento. We'll be back in Sacramento for the 46th annual conference next March 5th through 7th in 2025. Save the date, more to come soon. We're not quite done yet. We hope you will go to the sessions this morning. They're going to be starting. We're a little behind program, but we're still going to try and start them on time. So please move quickly. One thing I did want to share about sessions, we have folks who really need to be able to sit down. So if you see people standing in the room who might need a seat, we ask that you create some space for them at the front of the room so they can take that seat. And the roundtable discussions, I know have been a little packed. As you're planning your day, roundtable discussions are in a small room. We do have limited capacity. That was designed by purpose to really facilitate group discussion. So if you see that folks are spilling out, we encourage you to try and look for another room that might have more space. Thank you all. At lunch, there's going to be food trucks. Enjoy them. Enjoy the patio. And we'll have our final round of workshop starting at 1:15. Thank you so much for joining us.